spooky and ASMR. Hello, my spooky friends, and welcome back, or welcome to my channel. Long time no see. I will be doing a separate video on why I have been gone. The gist of it is that I just got a puppy. Her name is Lunabelle, and I've been fairly busy with renovations, so I was unable to have a setting where we could sit down and be able to relax together. So I will be doing a separate spooky update for you. Thank you to all of you who have checked in with me. I'm sorry for the late response and late video. It just wouldn't have been good content during that time. I will be recording a bunch of videos in bulk so that we can get back on track. So yes, today we are going to jump right back in to our true crime ASMR series by diving in to the case of Cosmo Dinardo. Between July 5th and July 7th of 2017, 4 young men were reported missing in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. All were subsequently found murdered. The victims were 21-year-old Thomas Mio, 19-year-old Dean Finocchiaro, 19-year-old Jimi Patrick, and 22-year-old Mark Sturgis. The murders were carried out by Cosmo Dinardo and Sean Michael Kratz, both aged 20 at the time of the murders. The 4 victims were murdered in 3 separate incidents, each after Dinardo arranged to sell them cannabis. It is said he would lure them to a family farm where he would murder them and hide their bodies. So, that is today's case. I will, as always, be adding this case to my True Crime ASMR series playlist, and this is where you can find past and future videos in this series. I do have some requests for things, and just know that I have not forgotten you. Someone has asked me to do gum chewing, and just know that that will be coming. I cringe a little bit with gum chewing, so I'm going to do it for you. I do have some updates to do with the True Crime ASMR calendar. We will be sticking to the calendar moving forward. And I won't get too far into all of that. So, let us begin. The disappearances began on July 5th, 2017, with Patrick being the first of the men to vanish. 2 days later, on July 7th, Mio, Finocchiaro, and Sturgis were also reported missing. Each of the 4 men was reported to be murdered the same day they went missing. Jimi Taro Patrick, born in 1998, was a rising sophomore majoring in business at Loyola University of Maryland. He was last seen around 6 p.m. on July 5th in Newtown, Pennsylvania. He failed to show up for work the next day. Patrick had met Dinardo that night to buy 4 pounds of marijuana, at which time Dinardo shot him and then used a backhoe to bury his body. Dean Finocchiaro, born 1997, was last seen around 6:30 p.m. on July 7th, being picked up by an unidentified person, possibly Dinardo or Kratz. His remains were found on July 12th, 2017, in a common grave on a Solbury Township farm. This farm was owned by Dinardo's parents. His remains were found along with the remains of Mark Sturgis and Thomas Mio. Finocchiaro's body was the first to be identified. Finocchiaro and Dinardo had a good relationship, with Dinardo saying that they were like cousins. As with Patrick, Finocchiaro had agreed to buy marijuana from Dinardo. This was the first murder in which Kratz was involved. The two men both repeatedly shot Finocchiaro. His body was placed in a metal oil tank that had been converted to a pork roaster. Mark R. Sturgis, who was born in 1994, went to meet his friend Thomas Mio. Thomas Mio was born on January 30th, 1996. They met around 6 p.m. on July 7th. Both men worked for Sturgis's father's construction company. The two did not show up for work, and calls to their cell phones went directly to voicemail. Dinardo met with Sturgis and Mio at a church to sell Mio marijuana. Mio and Sturgis were both shot as they exited their truck. When he ran out of ammunition, Dinardo drove over the still alive Mio with a backhoe, then placed both bodies in a metal tank that also held Finocchiaro's body. Dinardo attempted unsuccessfully to burn the bodies using gasoline. He used the backhoe to bury the tank containing the 3 bodies. Dinardo, a drug dealer, He also told investigators where to find Jimmy Patrick's body, buried in another grave on the property. The only motive disclosed by investigators was that Dinardo said he wanted to set the victims up when they came to the farm to buy marijuana. On the afternoon of July 8th, authorities tracked Finocchiaro's cell phone to a 90-acre farm in the Soulbury Township, owned by Dinardo's parents, Antonio and Sandra Dinardo, who also own a cement and construction company. So big money. While being investigated for the 4 July 2017 Pennsylvania murders, Dinardo also claimed to be responsible for at least 2 other killings in the previous 5 years in Philadelphia. Investigators have yet to verify these claims. Second cousins Cosmo Dinardo, who was born January 21st, 1997, and Sean Michael Kratz, who was born on February 14th, 1997, both age 20, were charged in the murders. On July 10th, Dinardo was arrested for an unrelated weapons charge, despite 30 run-ins with local police. Dinardo, the son of a wealthy businessman, had never been convicted of a crime. Dinardo was later released after his father posted 10% of the 1 million bail. On July 12th, Dinardo was arrested and charged for stealing and attempting to sell a car that belonged to Thomas Mio for $500. Suspicion was also raised by Mio having left his insulin in the car, something his family said would have been unusual for him to do. His bail was set at $5 million the next day. Dinardo confessed to the murder of the 4 men. In exchange for his confession, prosecutors stated they would not seek the death penalty. The day after his confession, Dinardo was charged with 4 counts of criminal homicide, conspiracy to commit criminal homicide, abuse of a corpse, and 12 other charges. On July 14th, Sean Michael Kratz was also charged with 3 16th, 2018, Dinardo pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder and was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Later that day, Kratz rejected a plea deal of 118 years with the possibility of parole after serving 59 years. His trial was scheduled for 2019. During the 2019 trial, Kratz was convicted of first and second degree murder in the death of Dean Finocchiaro and voluntary manslaughter in the deaths of Tom Mio and Mark Sturgis, and was later sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The families of the victims, Mark Sturgis, Thomas Mio, Dean Finocchiaro, and Jimi Patrick, would file a wrongful death case against the family of Cosmo Dinardo. 5 years after the gruesome murders, it would be settled in a private settlement between the families of the victims and the parents of the killer, Cosmo Dinardo. The lawsuits filed by the victims' families had alleged negligence by Dinardo's parents, who provided him access to ATVs, guns, and construction equipment, despite his past behavior and commitment to mental health institutions. One of the suits alleged the Dinardo family had provided their son with a playland for illegal acts. Cosmo Dinardo is the child of Sandra and cement contractor Anthony Dinardo. Cosmo lived in Bensalem and had attended Holy Ghost Preparatory School in the township. He received a scholarship to attend Arcadia University in Montgomery County before he made international headlines in the quadruple murder case. In a 2020 interview with Philadelphia Magazine, Sandra Dinardo described Cosmo as a model son before mental illness. Cosmo had expressed interest in becoming an orthodontist. He played for the Bucks County Bears football team and served on a township alcohol and drug task force, which he was selling marijuana, Sandra. Okay? Don't even point that out. Goodness. His father believed Cosmo would one day be elected mayor of Bensalem. And then everything changed, his family said. In 2016, Cosmo began treatment for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia and was on antipsychotic meds. He became obsessed with a Mexican drug cartel with a disturbing ritual for disposing of bodies. A year later, Dinardo would lure 4 young men to the family's farm in Soulbury and brutally kill and bury each. The search for his victims, Sturgis, Mio, and Finocchiaro, and Patrick, was termed the Lost Boys of Bucks County, and this would attract international attention after a 9-day search. Confession tapes of Dinardo and Kratz would be obtained, and in their confessions, they detail the gruesome murders and the cousins' attempts to cover their tracks. Dinardo, who has a history of schizophrenia, was calm and unsentimental as he described shooting the men, dousing 3 of their bodies with gas, and burning them in a pig roaster. By contrast, Kratz's voice cracked in the recordings when he recalled closing his eyes and shooting Finocchiaro moments before his cousin shot the dying man again for good measure. The cousins were not close friends. Dinardo told investigators the two had only just started hanging out a few months prior. In his confession, Dinardo couldn't even remember which last name Kratz used. Both men had a history of violence, and Dinardo claimed to investigators he strangled one man to death in North Philadelphia and shot another in West Philadelphia when he was a teen. Philadelphia police said they have no evidence he committed those crimes. In more recent years, Dinardo was banned from Arcadia University in Glenside and escorted off his high school alma mater's campus. In both instances, officials reported that Dinardo made people feel uncomfortable. Arcadia University school officials said they considered Dinardo a threat to public safety. After more than an hour of questioning by Bucks County detectives, Dinardo finally broke down. His breathing quickened and sobs erupted in a moment of uncharacteristic distress. I threw my life away for nothing. All I've done is nothing. I ruined people's families. The cousins, Kratz and Dinardo, never spoke again. Alright, that is today's video. I hope you found it informative and relaxing. I think the families of these victims had every right to hold Dinardo's family responsible. It is clear that Dinardo, despite his record and despite his mental issues, was given way too much lenience by his parents. I think it's okay to allow your children these responsibilities, but it's important to take into account their age and their behavior. with proper education and safety measures, within reason, these things are allowed. But if your child is in trouble with the law all the time and has mental issues like schizophrenia, it's probably not a good idea. Let alone his parents knew he was running rampant at the family farm. Like, I think all parents try to give their children the benefit of the doubt. But his parents ultimately should have been intervening in Dinardo's life, and getting him the right help and education that he needed. Kratz, I think, was pushed into this situation, but again, he knew right and wrong. This went too far for him to be redeemable. So, thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me today. I will be adding this case to my True Crime ASMR series playlist, and this is where you can find past and future videos in this series. Thank you so much, and spooky.